Now let's go into Genesis chapter 4 as Adam and Eve begin to have children, and let's read the account of what occurred as they had children. The only way I know to do this is to read this chapter because it explains some things that are kind of necessary in order to get a full picture. So let's read chapter 4 of Genesis together and let's see what all it says. I'll pause in here at times and maybe talk a little bit about what is being read. And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. So right here in the first two verses we understand Cain was firstborn, Abel was secondborn. Cain tilled the ground, or was a farmer or a husbandman, as recorded in the King James at times. And then Abel was a keeper of sheep, or a shepherd or herdsman. Verse 3. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel he also brought of the firstlings of his flock, and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, or angry, and his countenance fell. He got sad about this. Now, let's look at the picture of how things are transpiring. In chapter 3, Adam and Eve made clothes out of vegetable matter, or something that grew. Later, I think it was verse 21, the Lord clothed them with skins. So God had established here in chapter 3, that something from a tree, fig leaves, is not sufficient. I'm going to clothe you in skins. And in doing so, the shedding of blood occurred. Well, we go forward. That was with Adam and Eve. Now we're one generation down, or Cain and Abel, their children. And the same thing happens again. So in the chapters 3 and 4 in the Bible, God begins to establish something here. And the establishment is that without the shedding of blood, there's no remission of sin, or the nakedness is exposed. So Cain got mad, he got sad, or his countenance fell. And let's listen what occurred that Cain might have had an opportunity to react to. And the Lord said unto Cain, this is in verse 6, Why art thou wroth, and why has thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shall thou not be accepted? If you do good, Cain, I'll accept you. If thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall his desire be, and thou shalt rule over him. Now, I think that last little sentence there is saying to Cain, Abel will desire you, and you'll rule over him if thou doest well. And then in verse 8, And Cain talked with Abel his brother. And it came to pass, when they were in a field, that Cain arose up against Abel his brother, and slew him. So let's look at what didn't happen. There was no reply from Cain back to the Lord, saying, Well, Lord, show me, teach me. What have I done wrong? I didn't understand. And God was not telling him, You have sinned yet. He was telling you, if you do well, you'll be accepted. But in this case, Cain worked it out on his own. And this ties back to the tree that Adam and Eve got their fruit from. The tree of knowledge of good and evil. If I gain enough knowledge, I'll be okay. I can work this out on my own. I don't need the Lord's help. That's a pattern that's being established. So in verse 9, And the Lord said unto Cain, Where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, meaning the Lord, What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. Now I heard one time about this, that in our DNA, which is in our blood, and also in other places, but in our DNA there's vibration. And I heard that anytime there's a vibration, there is a noise, and that could explain one of the things that the Lord could have heard was the vibration of the DNA. Anyway, the Lord said, It crieth unto me from the ground. And now art thou cursed from the earth. So now the Lord is cursing Cain. He's cursing Cain because he had the opportunity to do well, but he didn't. Nor did he even seek the Lord in what he did. And now art thou cursed from the earth, which has opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. And a fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. And Cain said unto the Lord, My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid. And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that every one that findeth me shall slay me. Now, let's just look, it's not written in here, but let's look at what happened. Earlier, when God told Cain, if you do well, you'll be accepted, there's not any dialogue that Cain came back to the Lord and said, well, what do I need to do, Lord? Can you help me understand, or anything like that? But now Cain is complaining that the vengeance of the Lord is too great. Well, Cain, we read about this in Romans, but Cain was not acknowledging God in his ways. Then the vengeance came, or then the wrath came. There's a verse there in Romans, when they knew God, they glorified him not as God. And Cain knew God. He physically was in the presence of the Lord. Did not glorify him as God, went on about his business. Okay, in verse 15, And the Lord said unto him, Therefore whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any man find him and kill him. So Cain has been punished, but the Lord is now protecting him with a mark to keep people from slaying him. And also says if anybody should kill Cain, then he will have vengeance sevenfold upon the man. And here's a very key verse. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord, and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. Now that's a very key verse to remember. Cain went out from the presence of the Lord, and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. We're going to be a little later, we're going to talk in Genesis chapter 6, and we're going to run into the words Son of God, or sons of God. We're going to look at it in Job as well. We're also going to look at some of the New Testament. But this is very important here. Cain chose at this point to go out from the presence of the Lord. And here we read about some generations of Cain, or some of the descendants of Cain. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived, and bare Enoch. And he builded a city, and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. Another pattern being established. We talked about making an image of man, of corruptible man. Well, here is a person naming a city after a son of his, Enoch. So this side of the house, or Cain's side of the house, is clearly establishing a pattern. I'm going to go this way, and I'm going to glorify myself. And it may be at the cost of another man's life. In verse 18, And unto Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begat Mahalalel, and Mahalalel begat Methusael, and Methusael begat Lamech. And here is Lamech, about 3 generations down. And Lamech took unto him 2 wives. The name of one was Ada, and the name of the other Zillah. And Ada bare Jabal. He was the father of such that dwell in tents, and of such that have cattle. And his brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all such as handle the harp and organ. I have to throw this phrase in here right behind that sentence. You may have heard the phrase world-renowned musician. That phrase, that little link right there, I feel like it's important. We're going to see it again coming up soon, talking about renown. And Zillah, who was Lamech's other wife, she also bare Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. So here's a guy who teaches people how to use brass and iron. And the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. And then here's their father. And Lamech said unto his wives, Ada and Zillah, Hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech. Hearken unto my speech, for I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. Let's talk about this pattern. First of all, we talked about the Lord established shedding of blood for the covering of nakedness, or shedding of blood for the covering of sin, back in chapter 3. Then in chapter 4, Cain slew Abel, and Cain went out from the presence of the Lord. But the Lord had not passed judgment of death on Cain. He allowed Cain to live and told him, if thou doest well, you'll be accepted. After that point, Cain still chose to kill Abel. A couple of generations down the line, we now have Lamech, for the most part, saying a similar thing that God said, or one might say, declaring himself to be God, or to be as God, because he's now saying, if Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. So I've killed a man. If anybody comes along here and tries to take vengeance on me, it'll come on him 70 and sevenfold. So here's a man with a raised stature among people. I'm big, I'm bad, I'm going to take care of myself. And that's what he's doing. All right, in verse 25, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth. For God, she said, hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. And in verse 26, and to Seth, to him also was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. So in the beginning there was Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve had Cain. Then they had Abel. Cain slew Abel. So the only living descendant of Adam and Eve at that particular time was Cain, until Seth came along. Cain went out of the presence of the Lord. And then we see a few generations down the line, Lamech pretty much saying, I am God. And anybody that messes with me is going to get vengeance 70 and sevenfold. But then Seth was born, the third child of Adam and Eve. And Seth had a few generations down the line, and suddenly men began to call upon the name of the Lord. So this calling upon the name of the Lord, the sons of God, are going to be linked, and I'm going to link them very soon. So this is a foundational teaching that I feel is very important. We're going to go to Genesis 6, and we're going to continue in Genesis 6, because we're going to read some things that happen in Genesis 6 that will further explain how these men came to the point where they're making images of corruptible man